Welcome back, everybody. I'm Tommy McCarthy, and this is Let's Talk Cyber. Well, what a gent I have got to speak to today. It took me some time to track him down, and I didn't use any open source intelligence for that. Ben Owen, OSINT co-founder, welcome to Let's Talk Cyber.
Thank you very much. Welcome. And thanks for having me, Tommy. Appreciate it. Good to be here.
Ben, it's a delight. Catching up with you in Dubai with Danny at JSEC was just awesome. It was brilliant to hear where you've been in your life and what you've been doing and the great stuff you're doing just now, supporting the wider community with the various different services around OSINT, which we'll talk about. But Ben, obviously, you come from a very unusual background. Obviously, ex-British intelligence, say no more than that. Quite a few of our listeners might recognize your slightly maturer look at the moment, Ben. You've aged well, but you've aged a little bit. Exactly. So Ben Owen, one of the original members of the TV show, The Hunted. And that was a really captivating show. Obviously, I knew another member of the cast, ironically, was one of the guys out on the ground. But, you were based inside the operations center, and your job was to hunt down these celebrities that were on the run and using open source intelligence and other mediums as part of that tool. Would that be about right?
Yeah. So the first ever show actually come out, which was, 10 years ago now, the UK version.
Wow.
The actual premise of the first ever one was to see if people could truly go off grid from a government surveillance state. So it was supposed to be a show that was one and done and never, just a bit of an experiment. 10 years later, it's still going. And I've done the US version, the Australian version. But yeah, you're right. It's how can we track people down through privileged data, as if the law enforcement intelligence services would have that data, but also actually a large part of that intelligence collection points is open source data, and you'll be shocked at how much we have successes there.
Well, I've got to be really careful what I say now, because obviously there's a new data privacy law just come into effect, and it's causing a right uproar because Big Brother is watching more so than we'd ever expect. And it's, a lot of people are upset about the restrictions that this new Privacy Act are bringing into account. But what I'm looking at this from is obviously from a business perspective, first and foremost, because as a business owner, it's always good to know what tools are available to us. And we talk about digital footprints when we're teaching people online how to be safe. Obviously, you're looking at it from a much more comprehensive and a much more granular detail because of the purpose behind your business. But when you often talk about digital footprints, it can be a goldmine for investigators, Ben. Obviously, that's primarily part of your business of digital footprints, the stuff that people leave behind them online. That's your goldmine. That's the golden egg, isn't it, really, for you guys? But I guess it can also be a weapon for threat actors. The bad guys can also use that capability. So can you share one real world example on both sides of the coin? So can you give us some examples? Because Danny tells some great stories, so there's no competition here.
No pressure.
But can you give me an example of a good example and a bad example as well when it comes to the using of digital footprints?
Yeah, no problems. I mean, none of us really realize how much we put online every single day. It's staggering. Signing up for accounts, leaving online reviews, social media comments, website activity, all of that stuff you do online in a digital sense can be tracked and identified by the good guys and the bad guys, conversely. Now, one good example, and we use it as a bit of a case study in our OSINT training, we were able to pin down a very high, not ranking, but someone in the C-suite of a very large British energy company in the UK. And we were using it as an example of how hackers would target that person for maybe social engineering, for maybe blackmail, extortion. If this was another nation state and we're talking about espionage, this person would absolutely be a target. But we went through the sort of OSINT side of things, and it was absolutely staggering. Within literally 15 minutes, we had all of their email addresses, their phone numbers, their physical address, the vehicle that they drive, their passwords, emails, phone numbers, internal images of the property. We had their Strava routes, and literally as we're looking at the person in question, they just finished a run half an hour before we were doing this case study, which literally led that person to about 20 meters from their front door. So we're the good guys doing this, and that's where your digital vulnerabilities come in, and we make everything right. We lock accounts down. If we can get rid of it, we get rid of it. If we can't, we make it good. But imagine the opportunities there in that one example of a senior member of a British energy company, the vulnerabilities there for espionage, for direct hacking, social engineering, it's all there. And this is someone that is well versed in cyber. This was the CIO of the company, someone that also gets help from the government about how to keep things safe. So yeah, there's one example of many from, from a good side, if you're investigating and making it safe, but also as a bad guy, the opportunities were massive for that person.
Ben, the scary thing is obviously I'm new to cyber in as much that I've been around 8, 9 years, and you think you know everything there is to know that's available to you, but
Right.
clearly OSINT tools, they're not easy to find. You've got to know what you're looking for to be able to collate that kind of information. So that kind of leads me on a little bit. In your view, what separates a good investigator from a great one, and more importantly, is it in the online space, that is, and is it down to the tools, the mindset, or is it something separate, completely entirely separate? What is it that separates a good one from an extremely good one?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And for me, I think the answer to that is quite simple. In fact, let me rewind slightly. I think at the moment there's a huge misconception in the investigations, digital intelligence community, whereby many people think you have to be deeply technical to be a good online investigator. And I honestly feel that couldn't be farther from the truth. That you don't need to be technical. It's how you think through problems. Doing digital investigations, I mean, I've done both sides of the coin. So, I mean, I was never an ex-cop, so there'll be a lot of cops out there much more skilled at physical investigations than I'll ever be. But doing both sides, doing digital investigations is difficult as well, because how do you corroborate information, right? We live in
Yeah.
a user-generated world where most of the stuff we see online is personal opinion, supposition. It's someone putting their data on a LinkedIn account. This is all user-generated. It doesn't mean it's fact. So someone that is dynamic, someone that can think around problems, if they hit a brick wall, what could they do to get over the brick wall, so to speak? It's someone that can think dynamically, someone that doesn't look at OSINT and online investigations as a linear process, because it's absolutely not a linear process. You need to be able to react. You need to be able to go forward, backwards, left and right, and end up down rabbit holes and get yourself out of the rabbit hole. It is not a technical piece. Yes, it's great if you've got technical ability as well. But to summarize, someone that is someone that can think, mentally agile, think around problems, dynamic, curious, has a good thought process, not scared to rewind and go back on themselves, but also someone, for me, that stands out as an excellent digital investigator is someone that can corroborate information and doesn't just get excited at that first piece they find and think they got tea and medals at the end, because it just doesn't work like that. You've got to find the information you do not know, because that could change the whole investigation. Sorry, that was a long answer to a
No,
fairly
I'm
simple question.
I'm smiling because you met my colleague Irene Coyle, who is an ex-cop of 30 years,
Yeah.
and she constantly badgers us all about sticking to the facts,
Yes.
and she her attention to detail is second to none. So I can see where somebody with that skill set would be one of those investigators that was the better than the normal one because of the ability they've already got. And you're absolutely right. It doesn't mean to say that if you don't come from that industry, then you're going to be no use in OSINT. I completely understand what you're saying. Problem solving, trying to figure out how you circumvent challenges. There's no question about that. What we're looking at right now, especially with data breaches, because they're so widespread,
Huge.
we're reaching the point where hackers don't need to hack; they just need to log in. Only, I mean, it's crazy to think about how simple it is for these hackers. So, what are some of the most overlooked digital vulnerabilities that people and companies expose themselves to every single day without realizing it? Can you give us a few examples?
Yeah, I think for me, Tommy, on that one, you're right. The widespread information of data breaches now, stealer logs is exponential. We use the same tools and we look at the same databases as hackers look at. And honestly, it is absolutely scary. There's millions and millions of people across the world that do not realize there is a piece of malware monitoring exactly what's going on in their browsers for all the websites they're logging into. It's capturing their passwords, their financial details. And you can literally, if you know where to look, go and find this stuff and log in. Easy peasy. But to answer your question,
Right.
what's mostly overlooked, I guess, in digital vulnerabilities is In the most part, as a cybersecurity community in the corporate world, we're very good at corporate security, locking down accounts using MFA. We've got good password security. We do regular trainings. We have, good investments in the most part in corporate security. They look to employ the best people in the land to look after their cybersecurity posture. But what I personally think we are very bad at, certainly in the corporate cyber world, is when someone leaves the office or when someone logs off their corporate machine at home and they revert to their personal security in their personal digital environments, that bit is lacking significantly. Again, you go into work, you've got this lovely secure environment, you're on your work laptop remotely, you're in a secure environment, but when that all shuts down and you revert to your personal environment, that is where we are most vulnerable. And guess what? That's exactly what hackers are targeting. If you take
Yeah,
LastPass, for example, great password management tool, by the way, no disrespect, but their biggest breach came from the developer's personal laptop, his personal environment, because it's the lane of least resistance. The hackers just want to
yeah,
get in and get the money and get out, right, and not get caught. So why would they go up
exactly.
against the prowess of a big corporate who's spending millions on their cyber security posture when they can just go for someone's personal environment that works at the building and find their way in that way? That's my opinion
Ben,
at the moment.
and it's scary actually, sending shivers down my spine because I live and breathe on my laptop these
Yeah,
days.
everyone does.
Everything
Yeah,
I do, everything I do. I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of stuff I do online. Yes, we've got good network security solutions as a company, but I just hate to think about what my digital footprint looks like.
yeah,
In fact, Ben, I will definitely be taking a little bit more time than's necessary with you later on, just to figure out what we're doing, whether or not we
gotcha.
should be looking at other stuff. So it's scary. You've worked globally with the online investigations community. What trends and patterns do you see emerging across regions and industries? Is it different in regions, or is your online investigations industry all kind of doing the same stuff?
Yes, obviously it would be region specific. So the threats in different regions are different. Therefore, the solutions in different regions are different. But what the great thing is at the moment is that, as we are traveling through different continents, I think this year already we've been in 12 different countries, 4 different continents at conferences, trainings, consultation, etc. One thing that is refreshing to see, I have to say, Tommy, is actually the digital intelligence and OSINT community getting even more collaborative. And I've always said for years, actually, the breath of fresh air in the OSINT community is that people do share stuff. They're
Okay.
not there for their own merit, their own, greed and need for things or financial status. Yes, we have businesses and we need money, of course, but the more collaborative we all are, the better the space will be. I know that sounds cliche and cheesy, but putting it in a business perspective, frankly speaking, there's enough business for everyone. So that's really refreshing. But I've also seen sort of regulated sectors like finance or government. There's stronger appetite for OSINT now, digital footprint awareness. Industries like logistics, clean energy, tech startups. That for me is a bit of an issue globally, not just a specific region, because tech startups, whether that's fintech or, technology, vehicles, whatever that might be, their main focus from investors or otherwise is to get their product to market first, which
Yeah.
often means security is a bit of an afterthought. And at some point it bites them on the backside. And we're seeing that a lot with, electric vehicles and the electric sort of transportation market at the moment. So yeah, and like I said though, but the encouraging thing is, Tommy, is that global collaboration is growing, and it's so nice to see. And particularly, actually, I have to say, not to pick a specific region out, is the UAE. Just a wonderful bunch of people with a great positive attitude and mindset, and they just get it. And it's lovely to work in that region. It's lovely to work everywhere, but that one in particular,
Nothing to do with the sun, the sand, and
that
the great
helps.
food.
That helps,
For sure
and
it
the
does. And
efficiency.
again, that's where we met with so many
Yeah,
UK organizations and international organizations. And as I said to you earlier on offline, we're delighted to be hosting one of the very senior principal
yeah,
CISOs very shortly at our event here in the UK, who is determined to absorb as much knowledge and information and collaborate where he can, whenever he can. So you're absolutely right.
looking forward to
UAE
that.
are UAE are really setting the bar very high right now in every discipline,
They are
because obviously they've got the resource, they've got the enthusiasm, and they're actually one of the biggest targets, as we all know. And it
100%.
brings me on to targets and technology, actually, because we often hear that technology is the answer to all our challenges and it will save us. Everyone thinks they've got the silver bullet, but obviously, Ben, you've warned that too much reliance can be dangerous when it comes to just relying on technology.
Yeah.
Can you explain why that is, especially around the context of cybersecurity. So just put it into layman's terms. What do you mean? We're relying too much on tech. Why is that a bad thing?
I think for me, Tommy, that's, I guess, quite a simple answer. I mean, it probably should be a bit more technical, but for me, the simple answer to this is the tools and the software you purchase and utilize, whether that's for firewalls or technical cyber defenses or OSINT tools for investigations for that matter, those are only as good as the people you employ to monitor, assess, and analyze that data, because you can spend millions of pounds on great software and great solutions, but often they don't match that with the standard that it needs to assess the data that these great tools are getting. So it's great to invest in it, but you also need to invest to match the data it's getting for someone that can actually analyze it and make sense of it, because the more data you get, the better. But also that just creates confusion. And I've seen so many times organizations spend millions on software and tools. They don't match the capability with the person, and all that data is just being left. And the fact that they've invested in it, they think, oh, I've invested £1,000,000. No problem. We're now safe. You're not. You've got to use the data it gives. So yeah, the technology is only as good as the people that are assessing that information as it comes through, is my simple answer.
Yeah, and we see that all the time with the various different bits of new technology that we either invest in or are introducing to clients as a third party. You know, you do require a lot of knowledge, a lot of user experience to be proficient and understand where's the benefit, where's the value. So I get that. That explains a lot. You know, that's a great analogy actually from your point of view. Looking at how organizations look to reduce their reliance and actually their exposure digitally without spending a fortune and overhauling everything that they do, how can organizations look to reduce their digital footprint
Yeah, that's a
or
great
exposure,
question.
that is? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's, I guess, as what we do as a business, our bread and butter, and actually as a personal perspective, what I'm massively passionate at, because you'll get a lot of businesses trying to sell things very, very, for a lot of money, very expensive, and it frustrates me a lot because it doesn't need to cost you a lot of money. It doesn't require you to rip up everything and start again to reduce your exposure. It really doesn't. A lot of the biggest wins come from awareness and small sort of strategic changes, a bit of training, and it's exactly what we focus on. Like, what is the actual problem? Okay, let's address the actual problem rather than giving you a wide set of things to achieve, which becomes confusing and it doesn't effectively happen. But one of the most effective tools that we offer, and we've spoken about it already, is digital vulnerability assessments. And that's not, as someone might think, a technical piece. This is about going online and finding what information is publicly available online about a company and the key people, what basically a hacker or a fraudster would find in minutes and use against them. So like, CEOs, family offices, financial institutions we work with, even cybersecurity firms. And every time, quite honestly, the clients are absolutely flabbergasted about the amount we find on them. Like I said, like email addresses, phone numbers, passwords, their travel patterns, domains, internal imagery of the houses, the running routes, like I said, the pubs they drink in, the routes to and from work, the cars they drive, like literally everything that could be used. And of course, I have to point out that hackers, in the most part, don't have morals. So they're going to go for the husband, the wife, the children. There is always a route in. So finding what's publicly available, dealing with that as a first point of call is a huge recommendation. And like I said, it does not need to cost you the earth. You do not need to start everything again. There's some simple solutions you can do. But like I said, my main advice there would be a digital vulnerability assessment, but look at it from a human aspect rather than a technical one. And then you could perhaps venture into the technical stuff thereafter.
Yeah, well, I am going to be intrigued as to the impact you will have next month at the International Cyber Risk Symposium with our audience, giving them that workshop. So I will definitely be one of your candidates. Let's round this up with one final question, and I do like to ask this question to a lot of our guests. Let's talk about the future threats from your perspective. What do you see coming in the next 2 to 3 years that people aren't really paying enough attention to yet? Don't be saying AI. We've had that one a few times. But if you're going to say AI, then it's because it's a top draw right now. So is there a particular threat you believe that we should be really thinking about?
You'll be glad to hear, Tommy, I'm not going to say AI. I'll save the viewers' listening capacity for that, because I'm sure they'll hear it enough elsewhere. But for me, I probably mentioned the buzzword already during our chat today. But one of the areas that I'm seeing as a business, we're seeing significantly on the rise is digital extortion and blackmail. Hackers aren't always going after money through ransomware anymore. Increasingly, they're using stolen personal data, like we've mentioned. It could be, let's address the elephant in the room here. They target an individual at a business. They find that person is in a relationship, but they also find them on dating sites, etc., etc. One example of many, by the way.
Yeah.
And even this stuff, even though it's not illegal, this is still private to that individual. And like I've mentioned, there's so much information we can find out that people would assume is private in the digital space. But trust me, 95% of the time, we can find all of your digital footprints and find out what you're doing anyway. So blackmail and extortion is a rising tactic in hackers. And the reason it's not mentioned a lot, because we always hear AI, 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 is because a lot of businesses don't need to report it when someone's been blackmailed because their customer data hasn't ended up online. So therefore, data protection isn't an issue at this point legally. It's embarrassing for a company to say that someone's been blackmailed. Most people that have been blackmailed don't even report it. They just leave the company or something like that. So you just don't hear it. But trust us, we are dealing with blackmail on a weekly basis with clients. Like, what do I do? I'm being blackmailed. So that is a tactic that is already happening massively in the background that people don't even realize, and it will go through the roof the more that this, the breach data world that we've spoken about, rises. So that for me is a huge issue. And again, it all comes back down to digital footprints. If you can deal with that, you can negate a lot of that issue as well.
And I was just about to say digital extortion. That's exactly what it is, isn't it? It's just
exactly.
a different way of extorting money out of people. Probably in the context, it's going to be a lot harder for the bad guys to actually get caught because they're doing it all online digitally.
Exactly.
So there's no exposure of them to you as the victim. Ben, this has been fascinating. As you well know, it's something that intrigues me because, the world is moving at such a rapid pace right now. We're constantly playing catch up with a new piece of tech without realizing how that exposes us.
Yes.
By clicking onto this new software or downloading or using ChatGPT, what are the vulnerabilities there? So understanding what you're leaving behind you, for me, really needs to be front and center as far as I'm concerned. Your digital footprint needs to be given a little bit more credence to in relation to how vulnerable are you as a result of your activities online. Ben, I am super excited about what the future holds collaboratively with the OSINT Group. I wish I had more time, but for here and now, Ben Owen, the co-founder of OSINT Group, I'd just like to say thanks so much for joining me on Let's Talk Cyber.
Cheers, Tommy. Been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.